All right, class is in session. Take your seats. But this is not your typical history lesson because we are going to be diving into the most insane and wildest experiments that you've never heard of. How we do today? My name is Uncle Boyle, and if your history teacher has failed to teach you about this, that's exactly why I'm here today. So what do you think would happen when the United States Air Force would need to test ejection seats that need to go Mach 1? They would use test pilots, right? That's the most common, sensible thing to do. In this circumstance, I would say that you're wrong. Because in this instance, they would use drugged up black bears. Yeah, you heard me right. Actual black bears getting ejected from a jet bomber that was designed to go 2 times the speed of sound. This is gonna be the story of what I would like to call the United States Bear Force. This is going to be the funniest yet most American experiments that have ever been done. All right, so the year is 1962 and the Cold War is in full swing. America was looking for ways to develop high-speed, high-altitude bombers that would be able to deliver conventional and nuclear bombs to any part of the world. And obviously, since this is the Cold War, their main goal would be the Soviet Union. So the United States would, in theory, need something that could travel higher and faster than any Soviet Union missile. And this problem would be solved 6 years prior in 1956. This is when the world got to look at the first ever supersonic jet bomber. This would be the American Convair B-58A Hustler. Ignoring its flaws, the B-58 would shock the world in an ultimate show of force. Because not only could it reach heights of over 64,800 feet, it could do so while having the capabilities of reaching speeds of 2 times the speed of sound. And I understand that it's pretty hard to visualize, so let me go ahead and explain this to you in the most American way possible. An American football field, end zone to end zone, is about 360 feet. Now, just visualizing one football field, imagine 180 side by side stacked. And something going Mach 2 is pretty hard to visualize. So here's a jet going the speed of Mach 1. And just try to visualize this going 2 times faster. But so you get the point. The B-58 was the most efficient way to combat the Soviet Union threat. And now since the United States Air Force had the capabilities of striking anywhere in the world with it being untouchable, they had to plan for it being a target as well. Although faster than any missile, it still was not impervious to being shot down. In that case, they would need ejection mechanics that could safely eject the pilot while going 2 times the speed of sound. Introducing our first main character, Bob Stanley, who would solve this problem by making an ejection seat that was something out of a movie. This would be called the Stanley encapsulated engine seat. And this ejection seat would have a lever that the pilot would have to pull. It would then encase them in a shell primarily made of fiberglass, close their legs, and then with rocket boosters underneath of it, shoot them out safely. And see, now since they have a build, they just have to test it. So the United States Air Force and Stanley Aviation would have to hire dummies to go ahead and launch them out of catapults to see how safe this really was. And after a while of testing, they realized that this was not safe for humans. So they would acquire themselves a chimpanzee who they would name Mach. And Mach would be our first animal in this experiment who would have to ride this catapult in this ejection seat and get ejected. And not much information is given about Mach, but I can heavily assume he really wasn't having a blast. Pun intended. And after coming to the conclusion that a chimpanzee may not be the best test pilot, they would go ahead and settle on a female black bear who they would name Yogi. And Yogi would be our first bear to enter the United States Bear Force. And honestly, I would have made a joke about the chimp, but what sounds better, the chimp force or the bear force? And it was said they chose a black bear specifically because it closely resembled the metrics of a real human pilot. So, Yogi would be strapped to this catapult, launched, and ejected. And they would test this out for a bit until it was deemed safe enough to shoot from an actual plane. So on March 21st of 1962, Yogi would be flown up in a B-58A Hustler, strapped up into the catapult seat, and at approximately 35,000 feet at roughly speeds of 850 miles per hour, she would be ejected. And after 7 minutes and 49 seconds, Yogi would safely touch down to the ground, where it was reported that she suffered no injuries. Can't really say much about how she felt, she was drugged up, but it was at least safe. Unfortunately though, Yogi would be killed because they would have to operate her to see if any internal organs were really hurt. First member of the Bear Force was betrayed. Further testing of this would take place a couple of weeks later with another drugged up black bear who they would name Big John. And he would be shot out of the same exact plane, only at a different height of 45,000 feet and at speeds of 1,060 miles per hour. And he would also survive, just with a little bit of injuries and a couple of broken bones. And if you remember the end to Yogi, Big John was also euthanized for testing. See, and they would not just stop there. They would do this 6 different times with 6 different bears with only one dying mid-ejection. And it was no fault of the ejection itself. The bear that did die had a brain problem that was not closely examined or looked at, so it was assumed that when that black bear ejected, The stress in their head was too much for them to bear, and it died. And all these tests would be deemed as a success, with only minor injuries and 1 death being reported. Unfortunately for the United States Bear Force, all 6 bears, including 1 chimp, would all be killed for further testing. And at the time, of course, it's 1962. There's not a lot of laws in place to prevent the United States military from doing any experiments with animals. Later down the line, receiving backlash, but I mean, it was already too late. Like, what are they gonna do? As funny yet tragic as the story is, the United States Bear Force would pave the way for futuristic ejection seats, making the future of aviation way safer. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the story of the United States Bear Force. So anytime you see a pilot safely eject from a jet going speeds of Mach 1 or higher, you have Mach and the Bear Force to thank for that. I would say that's grounds for a thank you for your service. And thank you for sticking around to watch this whole video. If you made it to the end, let's confuse the people who didn't, and comment down below. I salute the United States Bear Force. Thank you all so much for watching. You guys have a good day and a good night. Peace.